this video is going to be a little bit interesting. Not only am I going to be crocheting Hornet and the vessel from Hollow Knight, which I'm really excited for. I think that's going to be super fun, but this is also helping me run a little test of different yarn sizes. In the US at a craft store, the most common yarn size you're probably going to find is a worsted weight or a 4-weight medium, have a lot of different names. That's also probably going to be where you're going to find the most selection of colors as well. And as someone who primarily does amigurumi, where I want to have a large selection of colors, that's where I've gravitated the entire time I've been crocheting, which is 6 years now. But I also know that a lot of amigurumi patterns are built for a sport weight yarn, or they're suggesting a sport weight yarn, as well as suggesting a cotton. So I've kind of wanted to try out a smaller weight yarn because you can get a lot more detail with a smaller weight yarn in the same physical space. But I also wanted to try cotton because it's got a much more matte finish than an acrylic does. Acrylic tends to be fairly fuzzy, whereas cotton doesn't often tend to be fuzzy. So this is going to be me testing out different yarns by making Hornet and the vessel and another little thing with different sized cotton yarns, and that's all it is. And I think I'm also going to be starting with Hornet because she's just like a little bit simpler, especially with the mask. Like, that is a much simpler shape to make than for the vessel, so I'm gonna start with Hornet's mask. I might be able to actually start splitting her little horns now, because here's the thing. If I split now, it's still gonna build up a little bit. So I think if I try splitting now, I can see what it looks like. And a lot of the final shape of this is gonna be determined by how I split. So I'm gonna go up to this point, then jump to the other side, and then keep working back around. Now the way I'm gonna do this is the same way I've done a handful of other things. Now what I do is I use foundation single crochets to bridge the gap. The reason I do foundation single crochets and not a chain is because it keeps things a little bit more even. If I were to chain across here and then single crochet back around, I would also be working into the chain on this side here on the other horn, and then it's uneven. It's like one side's got single crochets, the other side's got a chain. That's just uneven. So if I do a foundation single crochet, I can keep the stitch height, I can keep the stitches the same, plus I can work into these bottom loops of my foundation single crochet when I'm working the other side. Yeah, that's absolutely too much. Okay. Trial and error. Everything is trial and error all of the time. Yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. I think that might just do it. Alright, so I finished Hornet's head last night. That was the last thing I did. What I also did last night was I beat Hornet for the second time, so I am progressing in the game, which is good. But what I'm gonna do next is her dress, and here's why. So I'm doing her dress instead of her body next, because her like dress or cloak or whatever it is, the red thing she wears, determines a lot more of her like character shape than her body does. So I'm thinking if I can get the dress down and make the dress look good, then what I can do is make her body so that it fits within the dress while still keeping the shape that it needs to be. Okay, new plan, eyes first. I am having a lot of trouble trying to figure out where and how I want like the collar of her dress to sit, especially with not having the eyes on here to reference like how far up this is sitting. So we're shifting gears. Why is that like basically exactly it, and I got it in one? Wow. I love when that happens. I feel like I need a lint roller now, oh my god. And the good news is that still works. I can keep doing this without having to rip the entire thing out. Hooray! Okay, I've gotten pretty far with this at this point, and I'm still trying to figure out how I want this to look, because here's the thing. Crochet doesn't obey gravity. I mean, it does, but it doesn't drape, which If this were made of fabric, like, I'd have no issues probably. But because it's crochet, it's super stiff and it kind of wants to sit out like this, which is really cool if you're going for like that, like, you know, her skirts like out like this look, but I'm not. I want it to be more in this way, and I can like squish it into that shape, but it still flows out just a little bit more than I want. And I'm very much like at the point where no matter what I do with the dress, like, it's gonna look like Hornet. So I think I'm thinking about this too much. I don't really want to rip this all out and start over again because it's gonna all look kind of mostly the same. Okay, so it has been almost 2 weeks since that last clip, but I did finish the cloak. And the reason it's been almost 2 weeks is because I frogged this like 6 separate times trying to make it perfect. Because apparently I have an issue with perfectionism and I need to work on that. But I'm pretty happy with this. I think it looks pretty good. I could frog it again and do it again, but I don't think I should do that. I think that this is pretty good. I also did make this in fingering weight. It is much smaller, which is kind of fun. Now we're moving on to the body, and this is gonna be interesting. I think I'm gonna start bottom up, so start from her feet and work my way up. But with the body, I think I definitely want to try and not be so perfectionist about it. Trying to be less of a perfectionist for the rest of this video and the rest of my life, hopefully. But that's easier said than done. Alright, Hornet is officially done. I've actually got both versions done here, so the fingering and the sport weight. I'm extremely happy with how this has turned out. I made her nail as well, although I might modify this. I'm not exactly perfectly happy with this one, but I mean, I think that this turned out very good. So now I'm gonna start on the knight. Now the thing about the knight is I really want to try and get those little bumps on its like antlers of its mask or whatever it is. You know, those 2 little bumps that it has. Okay, I've gotten to another sort of tricky part with this, on account of how crochet works. I'm really happy with these horns. I'm not centered at all, but I'm really happy with these. The main problem now is how to connect them together while making the head shape more round than like oblong. Yeah, this one's definitely, at least for the head, gonna be a lot more thought than Hornet. You know, sometimes you go through a lot of, you know, trying to make things work one way, and the correct answer is to make them work another way. So instead of trying to connect these as one piece, maybe we'll just sew them on. Because as much as I like trying to connect things without sewing them, sometimes it looks bad. And sometimes you gotta prioritize looking good over ease of construction, especially when the way to make it not sewn is incredibly convoluted and bad. Alright, that is the head done. I'm honestly pretty happy with it. It took me a few tries on the head, and you may notice that the horns are different than what I showed on camera. I did modify them a little bit, give them a little bit more curve than what's here, and I'm much happier with these. So next up for this is, unlike Hornet, I'm actually going to do the body next. The knight's body is a lot more of its like character profile, I guess, than the cloak. Like Hornet's cloak is kind of like a big part of like her character shape. Whereas for the knight has a cloak, but it's not like, the body's still there for the most part. So body is going to be next. And I'm probably gonna construct it very similarly to how I did Hornet, working from the legs up and working the arms in from the sides. You know when you cut something because you're done with it and then you realize you might have cut the end too short to sew with? I think I might have done that. But that's okay. Yeah, so that's the body. I'm pretty happy with that. I think it turned out pretty good. It looks a little bit weird without the cloak, but I mean, once I add the cloak on, everything should get re-proportionalized, I think pretty well. So that is going to be up next. Now, I don't know exactly how I'm gonna make the cloak because the thing is, it does have like those little ripples, like the little, got my paper here, like this stuff. And the best way to do it would be to work in rows and like make that. But the problem is I would want each of these to be disconnected, and I don't yet know how I'm going to do that. So I might have to workshop that and think about that a little bit before I actually get started on the cloak a little bit more. I have a feeling that I'm also going to be frogging this cloak a few too many times. I've gotten pretty far around already, but it's not doing exactly what I want. I think we might have to restart, but I think that this is a good, like, first try at it. I feel like I could do an ASMR video of, like, ripping out stitches. Okay, so I officially have the sport weight Hornet and Knight done, as well as the fingering weight Hornet and Knight done. And it really is, like, they turned out so good. I'm so happy with these, and I did make also a nail as well for the Knight, of course. But now it's on to the last creature I'm making, and it's gonna be the Moss Creeps. And the Moss Creeps are those little guys from Green Path, the ones with the big mossy thing on their back. I think they're adorable, I think they're great, and I'm very excited for this one. Now, I have spent a bit of time thinking about how exactly I want to create that mossy structure on their back. I think that the actual size of them will be based off of these guys. These are some things I made to test out hook size with these yarns, and I think that that should be approximately the right size for how I want to scale these. So the hard part is figuring out how to make that texture on the green part without using a fuzzy yarn, because again, I'm just using straight up cotton yarn. There's no texture to these. It's just a plain cotton yarn. Now, you can actually make texture with crochet stitches, of course. So I found a stitch online called like the chain loop stitch or something like that. And oftentimes the examples I've seen are worked in rows, but I've modified it to work in rounds. So I take this down here, you can really see from the backside, it's still structured basically the exact same as I would with like a normal crochet orb, but the front of it has all of these little textural bits to it. I think this is gonna be exactly how I wanna make that green section. So I'm just gonna get right into making that. Okay, I've decided to do kind of a hard pivot from this. And the reason I've decided to do kind of a hard pivot is I don't know if this is gonna work. So what I did was, the wonderful thing about working on two of the same thing at once is I can use the second one to test out a different thing without ripping the first one out. So here's what I've done. I've essentially made the underlying structure so I could see if this fits to be the right shape and size, leaving these front loops open to add the texture later rather than working the texture and the base in the same thing, which probably should have done that from the start. Didn't think about it, then thought about it, and then decided not to do it. But I think this might work better. It'll be easier to keep track of where I'm at. I can actually see kind of what's going on. Hopefully this is the right shape. If it's not, I'll cry. But the other thing is you can pretty clearly see this seam here. It's just a lot harder to work like this when I'm trying to keep track. Like, I've got 3 stitch markers in here just to keep track of the start of the round. Whereas with this, I just have stitch markers in here in case I needed to frog back to certain places. Anyways, that's my hard pivot. I'm gonna take all of this out and start pulling all of this. I have finished all of my Hollow Knight creatures in both sizes of yarn, and I'm extremely happy with how these turned out. I also learned a lot through making the Mosskin. Moss Creep. They're different. This is the Moss Creep. I'm really happy with the sort of hedge-like texture I was able to get, and I was even able to make it a little bit better on the fingering weight yarn. There's a little bit more variation with this one, and I'm super happy with that. But yeah, it turned out really good. Here's just like one more little glance at them. They definitely probably looked better in the like cinematic thing you just saw. Cinematic, whatever. But here they are again in the different sizes. I'm really pleased with how these came out. If you want to make these for yourself, the pattern is linked in the description below. You can find that both on my Ravelry and on my website if you want to make these for yourself. And it is just as I expected. The fingering weight yarn won out in the end. It's a little bit softer in a weird way. I think the smaller yarn sort of like levels out the texture in a different way. Like it feels like if I feel Hornet's cloak especially, it's a lot rougher on the sport weight than the fingering weight. And I honestly didn't have that many issues with the fingering weight yarn. I mean, other than needing to hold my yarn tighter, which I just adjusted how I wrap the yarn in my hand, there really weren't that many issues. So I'm really happy about that. But I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.